So you may not know, but we do raised garden beds, and we actually have a few different approaches. So I want to give you some tips on what you would use them for and what style you should choose for your project. Our raised garden beds are all a nice thick 2mm thick steel with a nice roll top. So they're lovely in terms of the way they can be handled in the garden and the way they finish and look. They're precision engineered, which is really important because we have little systems for putting things together, such as you see here, the slots in this end flange. They will match up with the slots in the next length, and there's a simple wedge and slider. So this whole thing goes together just using a hammer, which I think is pretty incredible in terms of easy to do. We also have the edging all ISO certified at every stage of manufacturing, which means we can, well, for one, we know we're getting the weathering steel that is so special for outdoor use. The reason it's special is it develops a rusty patina on the surface. That's a really fine rust. This one's just started to move a little, started to come. That actually acts as a protective coat. It prevents that deeper rust that you would see with mild steel by having a really fine layer on the surface that continually regenerates. The color changes, so that's interesting in the garden, and it looks supernatural. Supernatural, that is. What we have here as well, I should point out, is this is a flexible edge. We call it our flex. It's got notches in the back, it's got spacing in the feet. And this it's remarkable actually how it will flow and curve when you connect them all together and you create a nice curving run. Really easy to work with. So it's great for a border garden, just to raise it up a little where there's curves involved. You can also use it for a more of a closed-in shape. So maybe you're making a kidney bean or a heart-shaped garden, or whatever you're doing to create that's got curves in it. You can use this product for that. You don't always want curves though. So we have our rigid edge here, and it's a pretty simple difference. We've taken out the notches. We have one solid foot. So that makes this a pretty sturdy piece. So it's really good for a straight run. Now, both of these, because they're giving elevation, they can work well for terracing, or they can work well just for a single bed. But either way, you're just lifting things up, you're giving your garden a lift, and I think that's a great thing to do in terms of adding interest to your garden. There's corners that come with these. So this is what we call a pre-made corner. It's ready to go. It'll just simply fix onto the end and you can continue on your merry way. With straights, you're more inclined to use the cornering. With the curves, maybe less so, but it does work for both. I would suggest the rigid is a 160mm length. So you may not need many corners on the project, which is great. You can add them in by using an angle grinder to score a fold line, essentially, creating some gaps and bending the piece. But if you've only got, say, one corner and you're going to work out in both directions from it, just buy one of these. It's a simple solution, and that will make your job really easy. Should point out now that we also have our Zero Flex, which basically comes as a panel. Now, I say a panel, we actually have quite a few different sizes. So you get to design a bit more creatively in terms of introducing corners. So if that puts you off a little bit with the rigid in terms of having to work in a smaller space, maybe you have to work around a post, that kind of thing. So you might be going along and back in and across. This is great for that because the panel sizes allow you to configure to your space. You can do a straight join for a longer run. You can have cornering coming in and then you can do an L. So super handy. In terms of the look, it's a bit different too. It's got the boxy top on this one. So maybe you prefer that to the top of the rigid. That's another deciding factor to consider. But yeah, this is a really solid number. They all are. All very strong, made of steel, and going to lock together beautifully in your garden. So I hope that's been helpful. A few things to consider. Curves is easy. You've got to choose that one. For straights, then you can look at what's going to look the best, what's going to work the best in the space you have. And one more point I should mention, the flex and the rigid can connect together. So if you've got a long run, but there is a curve at the end, you can work with the two. That's it. I hope that's been helpful. I'll leave you to get back to your garden planning.